Hi, this is Richard Edelman, and you're listening to The Trust Makers.
So hi everyone, I'm Smita Reddy. I'm the US Chair of Brand at Edelman. And we are so excited to be kicking off season 2 of our flagship podcast, The Trust Makers. We are recording this episode live from Advertising Week, in case you didn't know. And we're bringing together leaders from marketing all over the world here today. I'm joined with Kofi Amoo-Gottfried. He is a marketing strategy and communications guru. He's the first ever Chief Marketing Officer at DoorDash. And before that, Kofi worked as the Vice President for Brand and Communications Marketing at Facebook and previously held positions at Bacardi and Wieden & Kennedy. Kofi, we're so excited to have you on the podcast and to be here today with you. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. We have a studio audience in the room. It's great.
Yeah, this is like real legit, like live podcasting.
I'm into it.
So, okay, cool. So we're gonna get our podcast voices on. So Kofi, we're here at Advertising Week, the center where all of marketing comes together. And we're talking about some of the big challenges that people are facing day in and day out. So tell us a little bit about what keeps you up at night at DoorDash.
Wow, see, we did not prep this question. Many things. So what keeps me up at night at DoorDash? I think in general, it's really about figuring out what our customers need and being able to meet those needs. And the thing that's harder than ever is that changes, frankly, daily, weekly, monthly. And where you thought the customer was a month ago, even what our data and our models said a couple of months ago may no longer be valid. So it's really about having the agility to keep being responsive.
Yeah. So I want to take a step back because I went with a big question first. So let's talk about you. Your experience, your background, why, when we had our pre-chat, we talked about, you being an immigrant, I'm first generation, and just how you brought that experience to a company like DoorDash. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, I like to tell people, I moved from Ghana to St. Paul, Minnesota when I was 17, and if you ever want to experience culture shock, that's you should try that once. But I think as a result, I've always been an outsider, and so coming here as a scholarship kid, coming here living outside my country, living outside my climate, being far outside my comfort zone, required understanding people and figuring stuff out and almost becoming an empath, right? Because you just have to understand the world in a different way when you're outside of it, and so I think that experience as an immigrant, as an outsider, I think is really valuable from a marketing perspective, because I don't assume that I know what people are thinking. Usually I assume that I'm wrong. And so it's about asking and figuring it out.
Sometimes we all use the same jargon, use the same language. We're all guilty about it in the marketing world. But you really feel like the competitive advantage, or that what your way in has been, let's not think like that. Let's use my outside in.
Yeah, I think we're generally wrong about what we think people are going to do. Right? I think generally people are actually notoriously difficult to predict. All of you have those friends, you know what I'm saying? And certainly in aggregate, it's really hard. I was reading this thing about forecasting, which talked about how inexact the science forecasting is, because you're making so many assumptions. When people are what do you think the economy is going to be? It's you have to make assumptions about everyone's behavior to answer that question, which means it's going to be very imprecise. And a lot of that is what we try to do. We try to make assumptions about how is a group going to respond to things. And I think that's really fraught. And so a lot of what we try to do is go to the next level and actually try to understand by talking to people, by seeing how they behave in our products, and actually letting them tell us where we need to go next, rather than believing that we have the answers.
So fascinating, that idea that the algorithm, or there's not a technology that's going to predict that human behavior is human behavior. Yeah. When you talk about your organization and your constituents, as you said, you look at those three communities, the consumer, the restaurants, the merchants, the Dashers. Talk about that ecosystem, because I think that's really unique to your business.
Yeah, I think that the thing that's both like amazing and complicated about a business like DoorDash is we serve 3 totally different audiences, totally different constituents that come to us for totally different things. And so we have Dashers who are looking for an opportunity to earn. We have consumers who are looking for convenience. And then we have businesses that are looking for growth. And the challenge is really like, how do you balance all of these things? Because sometimes those interests aren't always going to be like equally aligned, right? So in my first week at DoorDash, you know, when you're new in a job, you're like, I have a great idea. It's Mother's Day, let's go big, let's do a promo. And someone was like, you should talk to the logistics team. And I was like, why? So I met the logistics team and they said, Mother's Day is one of the hardest days to get Dashers to drive. So the thing you can't do is drive more demand than we have the ability to actually meet. And we need to do this in a way that respects what Dashers are looking for. So it's constantly a challenge of thinking about each constituent's needs, but then how those needs are related to each other.
Right, and if one ball drops.
If one ball drops, the whole thing drops.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I love that you guys are so squarely focused on that simplicity. So you're quite interesting, Kofi, in many ways, getting to know you. But you know, we're living in really complex times, right? Be it the pandemic, the social justice movement that we've all witnessed. And your philosophy in marketing has really been, you know, to lean in when a lot of people feel comfortable leaning out, right? So talk a little bit about your philosophy and DoorDash's philosophy and the structure that you've put in place to really address social issues.
Yeah, I mean, our view is that when it comes to social issues, you kind of don't have a choice. So I don't think we even see it as a choice to lean in or not, because I think for a long time it was actually okay to like sit on the sidelines of a lot of these issues. But now it's kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? So if you don't speak out, you're going to get called out for not speaking out. And if you do speak out and you don't have the receipts to back it up, you're going to get called out for not having the receipts. So I think our approach has been like, we don't believe you can be sort of agnostic of these issues. Like they're real, they're in the world, they affect our audiences, they affect our employees. So you have to engage. But then you need a framework to engage, because it's really easy to get dragged into every issue. It's very distracting for organizations, very distracting for people. And also you find many organizations taking a position on things that they're not actually doing. So we wanted to create a framework that would actually hold us accountable. So our thing was, like, what is DoorDash fundamentally about? We're about empowering local economies. And when we think about that, the way to do that is you actually have to empower everyone in the economy. You have to empower Dashers who are looking to earn. You have to empower businesses to grow. You have to empower customers who need stuff brought to them. And so we have this notion that the through line for how we think about this framework is about equality of opportunity. Like DoorDash is fundamentally about like helping the local business compete in a world that's gone online. So how do we take that core concept and bring it to social issues? So we said, okay, we're going to be about equality of opportunity. That's what we are about as a brand, as an immigrant-founded company. But then we're going to build a framework around it that says, how do we build that into our products? How do we build it into our marketing? How do we build it into our logistics? So we start to think about, through all of our products, how do we bias for fairness? How do we bias for access? How do we bias for like progress? And then how do we really protect against things that might be like the downsides of those things, right? So like stagnation, bias. How do we actually think about how our products might introduce that in the world? So we then took that, we turned it into a planning tool for the entire business. So for every team at DoorDash that writes a business plan, they have to include a section of that plan that says, how is my business going to drive these principles forward? Like, how am I going to provide more equality of access through my business line, which has led to like amazing new businesses being launched. So we launched DoorDash Capital a couple of, maybe 6-8 months ago, about helping small businesses with loans, because we understand that it's actually very difficult for a small business to raise loans from a bank, but we also understand their business because we're already partners.
Right.
So we actually understand like what they're capable of doing, and so we can give them loans that allow them to, but that came out of a team thinking about that through the lens of the compass. We just launched the Local Goods Accelerator a year ago, which takes Black, people of color, women, trans-owned CPG businesses that are getting off the ground, and we're putting them in our Dash Marts, which is our first-party grocery. We're giving them access to a shelf And then that same team, the DashMart team, is amazing because these are first-party grocery stores. They looked at all the waste that was coming out of this, and then they turned them into like a food bank donation program, right? But like these are teams taking those principles and then applying it to the business. And that's the important, because you can't be about something that you're not doing.
Yeah.
So like it has to be true in the business, and then it also allows us to figure out how to engage with issues as they come in. So when something happens in the world, we can then take a perspective like, is this about equality of opportunity? If it's not, we're not going to get involved. Can we make an impact through our business? Does it impact our audiences? Because we don't want to be in the business of like, here's a black square on Instagram and we're out. Like, we want to engage meaningfully and drive progress through our business. And if we can't answer those questions, we don't engage.
I love that as a framework in so many ways, because we've been talking a lot about purpose, right? And it's embedded in you. It's at the core, and it's at the core of business decision in making, versus it being a bolt-on, right? And we see a lot of the bolt-ons, right? We see like, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and like add a donation button here, which is, still great work. But what I think you're talking about is really fundamentally changing the business model and empowering local communities.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about the program Neighborhood for Good, because I think that's something that's really interesting. It seems like that was also born out of Compass as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we did this economic impact report earlier this year, and like it was astounding to actually look at the data of what happens on every order, right? So I think when you think about DoorDash, most people in this room are probably consumers. Everyone at the company dashes, so we have that experience, right? Like all of us are required to go out and do a delivery at least once a month, all the way up to our CEO, because that's what they all did when they were driving. But like, so our thing generally is like, how do you take what's actually happening and bring it to light? So for example, this study showed last year, 6 million Dashers made $11 billion on the platform. Right, so like that's the amount of like economic contribution that went to Dashers. Overall, $30 billion to merchants in terms of the growth that they got from their business. And so we were like, okay, how do we start to contextualize what's actually happening on every order? And understanding that this is not about DoorDash, this is actually about these communities, and highlighting the fact that on any of these orders, like someone's making money, a business is growing, a customer is getting what they want at home, and how do we actually start to highlight the people in the community that are driving that? So that led to this notion of a neighborhood of good in every order, which is like there's this butterfly effect that actually happens to generate sort of that, we're about empowering communities. So like, how do we start to showcase the full breadth of, the work? So it's the first time where we're doing a campaign that actually comes at you from multiple perspectives. So you're gonna see a thing about a Dasher and how they're, even though it's a consumer campaign, you're gonna see a thing about a merchant and how they're growing their business. You're gonna see a thing about a person at home who's looking to benefit from convenience. So it's been really interesting to like start to get into talking about the flywheel.
I love the flywheel. I mean, it's like empowering communities, because if they all thrive, we all thrive.
100%.
Right? That's that
100%,
ecosystem in effect. I had no idea that you guys all have to do your own delivery.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's so much that you've learned from that experience.
It's amazing. There's a Slack channel at DoorDash that has about 3,000 people in it, and it's called Dashing or something like that. And every day there's literally tons of product feedback, because people are dashing and they go, well, I tried this and this hotspot didn't work, or that didn't work, or I got to the restaurant and the food was delayed. But like, it allows us to understand the actual experience of the Dasher, but also of all sides of the marketplace, because you have to go into the restaurant.
Yeah.
So if you understand like what's happening in the restaurant, you can provide that feedback back to that team. You have to go drop off at a customer site. So if you get there and you can't find the address, that's good feedback to the team that's building maps and logistics. So it's the notion of like, you have to be your own customer, and understand that like, we also have this philosophy, like no job is too small or too big. Like all of us do all of the things. Yeah. Right? It's not beneath anyone. Like this is like really important work that connects all of us. So
yeah, it's your community, right? So it wouldn't be an Edelman panel if we didn't talk about trust, but we actually came out with a new study on trust and technology, and found that only 43% of people believe that tech is actually doing anything to have a bigger impact on society. Would you guys describe yourselves as a tech company?
Yes, I think we think of ourselves as like a local commerce company fundamentally, but that's enabled by technology and logistics, right? So like the reality is that like the base layer of our business is like this massive logistics infrastructure that we've built. It's overlaid by technology to help consumers, Dashers, and merchants like mediate that and get what they want. So yeah, we're definitely a tech company.
So interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, because the way you describe it almost feels like more of like a community-led model, which is like,
I mean, it's
yeah.
the thing that's different about our business, having worked in pure play tech, is like it has real world interactions and implications every single day.
Yeah.
Right, so we're doing millions of orders a day, and that's like millions of interactions and millions of conversations, and like all of these things that are happening, and like moving things from one place to the other is a different business than being a pure play tech business. 'Cause
Right.
like you have to actually engage in the world in a different way.
Yeah. So we talked about you guys being leading edge when it comes to social issues.
Yep.
What lessons have you learned from that in terms of going out there in front? You know, has it always worked out?
I mean, look, I don't think there's a working out here. I think for anyone in this room who's dealing with these types of issues, I think the most important thing is being authentic to like what your business is about. And that's where you lean in and be clear about that, because the reality is that like some of the stances we take are unpopular.
Right.
We have lost merchant partners because of some of the stances we've taken. I get hate mail every now and then from customers because of the stances we take. And they're not universally acclaimed, but like if they were, they would probably be the wrong thing. Like values have a cost, like they're not free. So if you're gonna take a stance, you have to be prepared that like that's going to come with some part of your constituent base that may not be aligned with that. But we feel confident that so long as we believe that this is true to our thing and the business we're building and empowering local communities, it's about equality of opportunity, like we'll take the flack when it comes, it's okay.
Yeah, I love that you said values are not free,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a cost to everything. So we talked about human behavior, we talked about not necessarily assuming that you know everyone's intent. You know, when we look to the future, you know, Jamie Dimon is saying that we're going to be in a recession in 4 to 6 months. Like, what sort of impact does that like outlook have for your business, and what are you guys doing in terms of, you know, are you thinking about recession proofing? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is like top of mind for everyone, but I think the thing that we have is we had an opportunity to go through a very fundamental shock to our business when COVID happened. And the biggest learnings from that, which relate to how we approach this next moment, is that the only questions worth answering when COVID happened was like, what do customers need? And how can we help provide it? What do Dashers need? What do merchants need?
Yeah.
Right, and so long as you stay focused on answering those types of questions, chances are you're going to be fine. So I think we asked the same questions this time around. Say, okay, what do merchants need? When we talk to our merchant partners today, we know cost of goods, super pain point around inflation, but even beyond that, labor is the number one thing every merchant will tell you about in terms of their ability to actually like staff their stores and drive growth. So then we have to think like, what might we be able to bring to the table as a business to help with those problems? We know that if we go into a recessionary environment, the type of work that Dashers do is going to become even more important. That type of work in terms of being able to supplement incomes in an environment that's inflationary and recessionary. So it's like, okay, how do we help Dashers continue to earn? And then on the consumer side, obviously affordability is going to be important. So how do we think about, how do we bring more affordable partners onto the platform, whether it's like Dollar General, or thinking about like other types of partnerships, and how do we make the core product itself more affordable? So like, I think the answer is always like, figure out what people need, figure out how to provide it, and do the best damn job you can doing that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. You know, it's a very like high empathy led model.
Right.
If you think about it, it's all about people.
Right.
It's about those three groups.
Right.
Which is sort of sometimes the antithesis of big tech, right? But you actually have to like lean more into that empathy and understand where people sit, how they are thinking, what are their motivations in order to operate your business.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's like a very daily, real world business. It's not an abstraction.
Yeah.
Like these things are actually happening, and so like if merchants are unhappy, we're gonna hear about it. If Dashers are unhappy, we're gonna hear about it. If customers are unhappy, we're gonna hear about it.
The feedback loop is
It's
like constant.
every day. every day.
This is so interesting. So we want to open up some questions to the audience. So let me see if we have any that are coming up. Okay. So what are some of your day-to-day tasks as the CMO of DoorDash? It sounds like every day is pretty different. Or
Every day is super different.
Yeah.
I think at a high level, we're thinking about like driving growth and engagement across each of our audiences. We're thinking about how does marketing help merchants be successful once they're onboarded on the platform? How do we help them get to like that magic moment? How do we help Dashers like overcome? And I don't know if anyone in here has done like gig work, but like the first week is like nerve-wracking because like you've never done it before.
Yeah.
So we know there's this like anxiety around people who want to earn, but like can't really get over the hump of like, what's this actually going to be like? So like, how do we design programs that help them overcome that? So I think a lot of it is just really thinking about growing the business, driving engagement, solving problems for customers, and that changes on a week-to-week basis, right? So depending whatever is the hot button issue of the moment, that's usually what's going to take my focus. We're thinking right now, we're here this week with our ads team who's building out like an amazing ads platform, which actually was also inspired by the Compass because they designed an ad platform that was not about costs per click, but about cost per acquisition. Because if you're a local vendor, if you're a local florist or a local restaurant, you have slim margins and you've never invested in advertising or marketing because you don't know the ROI.
Yeah.
So we built a model that actually says every dollar you put in, we will only charge you if you get a return. So like this week is about helping that team out as they come out at ad week. So it's pretty like different on a week-to-week basis.
like that's a very high value model too for your
100%.
Yeah, it's amazing. So how does DoorDash address sustainability issues? Increased transportation emissions, increased consumption, environmental justice, more traffic jams, air quality in urban areas.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're early on this journey. So we have a sustainability team that's thinking about these types of challenges. We're exploring things around packaging. We're exploring things around fleet management. But I think it's going to take us some time to figure out like what is the right strategy here. We're piloting, but we're early. But it's something we're absolutely thinking about because, when you think about the ecosystem effect, again, if we want to be a force for good and empowering neighborhoods, this absolutely has to be part of how we think about that work.
Yeah, so interesting. So I think we're waiting for some more questions to come in, but I had another question as we were talking about your ecosystem, and when you close your eyes and you think about what the future looks like for DoorDash, like are you thinking about new segments, new categories?
Yep. So DoorDash was founded almost 10 years ago. Next year is our 10th birthday.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. If you go back and look at the founder's submission to Y Combinator, which was a accelerator program in the Bay Area for tech companies, the submission then was that they were going to build a local FedEx. So the idea had always been, like, what's the fundamental issue that businesses are facing today? They walked around, talked to like businesses all around Stanford where they were. And over again, they heard about like, hey, delivery, like the world's moving online, customers are not walking through my door anymore. So our ambition has always been like, be the way that every local business connects to every local customer, right? We started with food because it's the largest and most frequent use case.
Yeah.
It's also the hardest one to get right. Like you don't care if your jeans are 30 minutes late. If your burrito
Yeah, I mean, you can't
30
get
minutes late, you care a lot.
my spicy tuna roll. Like, you know, it's like
People get hot. I'm happy to share my LinkedIn threads with you. Angry people. But I think we started with like that, being able to build something that can do like a burger when it's hot and ice cream when it's cold.
Yeah.
Allows you to do pretty much all of the categories. So our ambition has been like, we want to empower every local business. And so, you know, over the past year, we brought on grocery, we brought on convenience, we brought on alcohol. Dick's Sporting Goods just launched on the platform, pure play retail. So we think there's an opportunity to just keep bringing more and more to people. And then we have to get better and best in class at each of these categories because they're all different. And the reasons customers come to you for them are different, and the things they're looking for are different.
And it's so funny about food's personal, food
It
is
is hot.
culture. It is like there's an emotional attachment to it. So I completely get that. Okay, so how does DoorDash deal with the differing values of so many vendors as a brand that promotes other brands?
It's a really good question. I think in general we try to have like a standard that we certainly hold ourselves to, and we try to communicate that standard to all of our partners in terms of like, these are our values, this is what we generally expect. Now, we're not going to tell anyone how to run their business, but if people do things that we find to really run afoul of our values, which has happened, we will delist partners. And we have marketing partnerships that we've discontinued because a brand or partner did something that contravened those values, even though it's driving, value.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same on the merchant side. So like we want to use our space in the ecosystem and our voice, but we also understand that not everyone's going to get to the same places that we have. And I also don't claim that like our values are the right values for everyone. Like this is the point of like diversity and like having different viewpoints. Like not everyone's going to believe all the things that DoorDash believes.
Yeah.
That's okay. But I think on the things that we believe are like a fundamental baseline, we want to hold a hard line.
That's great. So I think we're kind of close to time, but I actually I had a question.
Yes,
which is,
please.
like, what's your favorite thing to dash?
Oh, to like order?
Yeah, order.
God, oof.
I know it's like so.
Okay, so I moved from California to South Orange, New Jersey a year ago.
Yeah.
My number one favorite thing about this move is that there's Ghanaian restaurants on the app right by me. So now I get to like just order jollof rice from my local spot,
Oh, that's so
which is amazing, which I could never do in California because there's no Ghanaian anything. So I like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Kofi. I mean, I think this is probably one of the most empathetic, most cultural-driven conversations that I've had in a while. I so love your approach, that human-led, human-centric approach for how you're looking at the company. So congrats to you all, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having
Awesome.
me. Yeah, cool.
Thank you for tuning into The Trust Makers, an Edelman podcast in partnership with Advertising Week, where we speak with leaders and other trust builders across institutions. See you next time.